Well, my father just kicked me out of the house because I attacked him. Yeah, I know, I might look like the bad guy here, but hear me out for a second. The reason I attacked him is because I found out that he was number one, cheating on my mom, number two, abusing my mom. So when I couldn't get through to him, I decided to call somebody he won't like very much, his sister. I know, doesn't sound that scary yet, but let me break it down exactly why that is a nightmare for him.
Hey, my name's William and I'm narrating my story. My mind is really messed up, so I thought it might help me to share a story with you people. You can give me your thoughts and suggestions regarding it. And my dad's just kicked me out and my mother as well out of her home. So you can see my life is a mess right now, quite literally. Let me give you the background story so you can understand my situation completely. I'm an only child, so I've always been lonely when I compare myself to people around me who have siblings with whom I play. My mom, being a housewife, tried her best to give me as much time as she could. She tried not to let me feel alone. She used to play with me as a sibling would, and she's been my best friend since I was just a child. My father, on the other hand, was not as present as my mom was. He had to handle the business, so he was only free on the weekends, and therefore he made up for the time on the weekends. He took us out to amusement parks, and we had a dinner outside. I always looked forward to the weekends because they marked endless fun with my mom and dad. Oh boy, did time fly. And I grew up, but the traditions, they never really changed. Sometimes I would make plans with my friends and skip the family outings, and my dad always got upset over it. It was sweet to see that our small family was going to stick together and not let the traditions just change with time. Things began to change, though, since last year. Dad started to stay out on weekends, and he said that he was, quote, busy. It was weird, as he was the one who was the most eager about these family weekends, and now he was pulling away and always making excuses to get out of them. It was not normal to me, and at first Mom and I assumed that he must be having busy days at the office because running a huge business was not a piece of cake, of course. We were expecting it to change, but months went by, and my dad stayed busy and kept neglecting his wife and son. I could see my mom struggling with his changed attitude more than I was, and one day I could not stop myself from asking my dad what's up with him. As he got back from his office and sat down to have dinner, I went to him and asked him why he was all of a sudden so busy, all the time. My dad mumbled under his breath that there were just too many things that he had to do at the office. After that, I requested that he manage and take a little time off if possible. My dad did not reply to that, and he completely ignored me. So I got up and left the table, hurt by his response, and even if he was unable to give us time, he could have talked nicely to me and explained himself. I mean, come on. He was just so unbothered that he did not even answer properly. I talked to my mom about it, and she said that he had been behaving the same way with her. He came home late at night and went straight to bed, and he did not have many conversations with her, and was always frustrated and rude. She assumed that he must be really stressed at work, but that did not make sense to me. All my life, I've never been seeing this side of Dad. It was very new to me. It did not fit into his personality, and I was intent on finding out the real reason behind his constantly upsetting behavior with his family. Well, on one Saturday, my father, as usual, left us and said that he had to go to the office. It was not anything new to us anymore. I mean, we've gotten used to it by this time. I thought about doing something nice for him. He had been working, really hard. I wanted to make him feel good amidst all the stress at work. I bought a box of his favorite donuts and coffee and decided to drop it off at his office just to give him a little surprise that might cheer him up. As I got to his office, his assistant was surprised to see me, and I asked him about Dad. He seemed clueless. He reminded me that my dad did not work on the weekends, and it's always been this way. I was taken back by what his assistant just told me. If my dad was not at the office, then where the heck could he be? Where was he all these weekends? Why had he been lying to us about it? What was he hiding? As I got home that day, my mind was full of queries. I just needed answers to all of them, and when Dad got home that night, I went to him and asked him about his day. He was in the same tired mood that he usually just puts on when he's at home. He said, It was a tough day at the office. He was lying to me right to my face, and he had not been in the office, and he was making up stories about how hard he had worked. I wasn't going to let it go. I was determined to get my answers, and I knew I had to share this with my mother, but I wanted to know the entirety of the truth before I did that. Well, the first thing that I could think of was to check my father's laptop and his phone, as it might help me figure out his whereabouts. I knew it was extremely wrong for me to do something like that, but there was no other option that I could think of. I began to look for the perfect moment to do this. And although, it was really hard, one day I got my hands on Dad's phone as he was busy in the garden, meeting up with some old buddies. First of all, I went through his chats, and to my utter shock, I did not have to look for anything else. I found what I've been digging for in those chats, and my father was having an affair. I could not believe my eyes, and I had no time to react because I needed to gather the evidence for myself. I immediately took out my phone and took pictures of the chat with a particular woman. I went straight to my room and sat down to process everything that I had just seen. I'd always thought of my father as somebody who was a good husband. My mom is an excellent one, and the most kind-hearted woman I'd ever known. Before all of it, I could say the same about my father. I saw him love and take care of my mom all my life. I'd never experienced any sort of toxicity in their marriage. There, the occasional argumental fight, and of course, but nothing abnormal or extreme. They seemed very happy together. Why had my father started acting like another, person? He was perhaps involved with another woman. What was wrong with him? What had gotten inside of his head? I was boiling with absolute anger at this point. The moment I found out the truth. I wanted to confront my dad right then, but I knew that was not the correct way to go about it. After a lot of ruminating, I decided to let my mom know the truth about father. I went to her when Dad was not home, and I told her everything. I also showed her the photos and the chats to let her know that he was really cheating on her. My mother began to cry, and seeing tears in her eyes made my heart shatter. She was hurt to the core, and so was I. That night, as my father returned home from work, my mom stood up and confronted him about his affair straight away. My dad was shocked that we had found out the truth, and he tried to deny it to save himself. He lied more and said that there was nothing like that going on, and he called it a big misunderstanding, but my mom showed him the photos of the chats between him and his lover. My dad got furious that we snuck into his stuff and had invaded his personal space. He tried to raise his hand to my mom, but I jumped in the way and stopped him, and as I pushed him away, I've never been angrier than that moment. I shouted at him and told him that he was the worst father in the world. Dad had had enough. He pushed us out of the house and he told us, "Don't you ever return here." He said that he did not want to see our face again in his lifetime and that he was cutting everything to do with us off. We're nothing to him anymore. Poof, gone. Well, after getting kicked out, Mom and I went to Grandparents' house because there was literally no other place to go. Grandpa and Grandma got so worried for us, but we assured them that we would find a way out of this mess and that they should not be worried about us at all. The truth is I'm worried. I'm also angry, and I'm burning from the urge to seek revenge from my own father. Oh, guys, what would you do? Update number 1. Hey guys, thank you, everybody, for your suggestions and words of consolation. I just wanted to update you about what happened in my life. We're still staying at our grandparents' house as Dad kicked us out, and it's not been easy for us at all. We're struggling a lot, especially my mother, who's really sad these days. It'll take her some time to process the fact that her husband, whom she'd loved more than anyone, chose to cheat on her and throw away their entire marriage. I'm trying to give her the time and space that she needs to feel better, and my mind, however, is stuck on getting revenge on my dad. I'm not going to let him get away with everything that he's done to hurt us. Even if my mom does not agree, I'm going to do it anywho. Last week, Mom did something weird. She was extremely disturbed by this, and she told no one and called my dad's lover. I don't know the exact complete conversation that happened between them, but the result was not good. My mom came to me and told me about it herself, and I was surprised when she told me that she had called that woman. I asked her the reason for it and what she had talked about to her. Mom said that she did not know what she was doing and that none of it made any sense to her. My mom had called her hysterical and had asked her the reason for ruining her life. She also called her a homewrecker and did other mean things. The other woman had cut her call and did not answer her again, and I reminded my mom that cheating is a complete choice. Nobody forced Father to go and have an affair. He did it voluntarily and by choice. He was the one who decided to ruin their marriage, and you can't blame the other woman entirely. Ma sighed and said that she knew it, but she had been really overwhelmed by all sorts of emotions, and at that moment she had no idea what she was saying. The results of that conversation was about 2 days later when Dad showed up at my grandparents' house. He was really mad, and he had said that he wanted to talk to my mom alone. I told him that this was not going to happen and that whatever it was that he wanted to talk about, he would have to do it in front of me. He was about to hit me again when I reminded him that I was going to retaliate, and he looked at me in absolute disbelief. He could see that I was not going to budge, so he asked me to call my mother, and when she arrived, Dad immediately confronted her about calling his lover. He pointed out that it was a very childish thing to do and stupid of her. Mom and I just stared at him, shocked. It was very childish, he said. His audacity. This man just ruined us and had given us trauma for life, yet he was standing here completely just complaining and telling my mother that she was being childish. Before any of us could even utter a word, my grandfather stormed in and started shouting at Dad. He told him that he was the worst human being and that he would not get away with what he's done. Grandpa asked my dad to leave immediately, as he simply could not stand him at all. Before Dad left the house, he told them that he was going to file a divorce and that Mom would soon get the papers. As Dad left, Mom began to cry once again. I consoled her and tried my best to make her feel better, whilst I was furious as hell inside of my own head. Updates. Number 2. Hey. Well, here's what happened next in my life. My mom took this entire thing really bad. She was mentally disturbed and was not getting better at all. So we had conversations with her, and we had to convince her to start talking to a therapist, which might help. Meanwhile, I've been focusing on the revenge part, and I thought a lot, and at last I came to the conclusion that there was one person who might be on our side in the scenario. It was my dad's elder sister. You know, Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty's the strictest and most disciplined person that I've ever known, and she has a very strong moral compass, and she never compromises on her principles, and she's truly an inspiration. After the death of my paternal grandparent, she took over the business as my father was quite young at the time. She had to face a lot of hurdles. She struggled a lot because she was a woman. However, she did not give up and worked hard day in and day out. She did not let her dad's business down. In fact, she expanded it further. Even after Dad took over the business and she got married, Aunt Betty did not let go of the business at all. Oh no, she's the one who dictates Dad and most of the things he does. Dad didn't have any say in whatever Aunt Betty decided. She was the one who had the final authority in almost every matter. I discussed this plan with my mom the day that she was feeling better. My mom agreed with me. She said that Aunt Betty is, indeed, the only person who can compromise on what's right, even if it goes against her own brother, and she would be able to help us out in the entire situation because my dad had completely disowned me and Mom. As I got Mom's approval to go ahead with the plan, I reached out to Aunt Betty. She was out at the city, and she said that she would return next week. She asked me if everything was all right, and why did I want to meet with her. I didn't want to talk about these things on the telephone, but I had to tell her something, so I gave a brief summary of everything. You know, everything that happened with Dad so far. I also told her that Father had decided to divorce Mom and that she would be hearing soon from his lawyer, and Aunt Betty consoled me and asked me, "Don't you worry at all." She asked me to leave the rest of the matters up to her, and she said that she would handle it herself. She said that she would try to get back ASAP, and I have no idea what she's going to do next. She did not even say anything, but I know that she sounded very mad at Dad. It has relieved me to know that Dad is not going to simply get away with whatever he has done to us. I promise I'll be back for another update. Update number 3. Yo, here's what happened next in my life. As I'd already told you, I decided to include my aunt in the plan to seek revenge. After the week, Aunt Betty came to meet us at our grandparents' house, and she asked my mother everything in great detail. Mom and I told her the entire story. We included everything from the beginning and how my dad had started to pull away and ignored us until I found out that he was having an affair behind our backs. Mom began to cry as I was repeating the details about how my dad pushed my mom and tried to hit her. He would have beat her up if I had not intervened, and Aunt Betty hugged my mom. She told us that Dad had called her 2 days ago to tell her about this matter herself. He had completely twisted the story and made up all sorts of things, and Dad had told her that Mom was constantly unhappy in the marriage. She kept pushing him away and went to live with her parents, and so he finally decided to pull the trigger, divorce, and marry another woman. But we were shocked to hear those utter lies. He was the culprit. He was the man. He had put the entire blame on my mom for looking no good in front of his sister? Ugh. My heart broke to know what my dad was stooping so low for after each passing day. Aunt Betty assured us that she knew that her brother was a liar, and it was honestly crystal clear. She said that she was going to make sure to teach him a lesson for life. He was a cheater, he was a liar, and he was not going to get away with all the wrong deeds that he had done. He was going to pay for them. So she shared the initial plan. She said that she was going to blackmail father until he issued a public apology for cheating on his wife. He was also going to apologize to me for being a horrible father and to my maternal grandparents for disrespecting them in their own home. She said that as far as the divorce was concerned, she would have the best lawyers representing my mom. This would make sure that Dad would have to pay a huge amount of alimony. It would not make up for all the ways that he has hurt us, but at least it would be something. Aunt Betty left, and Mom and I were very satisfied. Come on. I've always admired Aunt Betty. My whole life. I loved her a lot, and she's the sort of person who knows the perfect balance between kindness, strictness, and whatever is needed. Update number 4. Hey, I just wanted to leave an update on what happened next in my life. Aunt Betty did exactly as she had planned to do so. She confronted my father about the whole matter, and Dad stuck with his lies and refused to accept the truth. As a result of this, she had to show him the screenshots that I had taken for proof. He was struck with horror to know that she had obtained the evidence from me. Things got crystal clear to him as he realized that Aunt Betty was not on his side, and she was going to make sure that he got punishment that he deserved for his actions. Guys, within a few days, Dad had to release a public apology because his position was in danger. He confessed to his affair and accepted that it was all his fault and that my mom had nothing to do with it. He also accepted the fact that he tried to lay hands on her when she confronted her about his affair. He apologized to my grandparents for disrespecting them, and he apologized to me as well. Dad had hoped that after the public apology, things would get somewhat normal between him and Aunt Betty. However, we knew that he was not going to let it happen. Aunt Betty was very rigid about these things. We got to know that she had kicked him out of the business. It was not as if he had gotten nothing, but Aunt Betty had the most power in the business. Dad got way less in comparison than her. She was the one who taught him everything about running a business. She had been his mentor. But he didn't have her anymore. Since that was not enough, Aunt Betty wanted to make sure that Mom got some financial support for being an excellent housewife all her life and getting cheated on by her husband. She had hired the best lawyer who was representing my mom in court in the divorce case. Dad lost there as well. He had to pay a very large amount of alimony, and it took away a lot from him. However, I must admit that I have not been happier. I'm glad that Dad had to go through all this. He really did deserve it. And I'm just happy that his own sister stood by us and helped us instead of being on the wrong side. Final updates. A few months have passed. Hey, I just wanted to give you guys an update on our current situation. Mom's doing really well compared to the last few months. She's been very regular with her appointments, and she has adopted really healthy habits, and it's focusing on herself now. She's started a small business, baking. It's going well. I'm really proud of her, and my mom did not have a career as she had always been a housewife, and she loved it. It was not forced upon her, but she just left her job when she got pregnant with me, and from that day, she made her family a priority. She thought it was her job to cook for her family, and she took great care of us. After the divorce, I started to push her to start working professionally, as it would get me, my mind off of a lot of negative thoughts. And money would be another bonus. Mom decided that she would start selling cakes and other baked food. She's good at it. She's getting better with each passing day, and I'm happy to see her like this. Coping with all of this has not been easy for me either, not in the littlest bit. It's been too much for me. Before this, I did not get the time of processing everything that had happened. A lot was happening way, way too quickly, and I never got the chance to think about it in too much detail. Now that it's over and I'm finally letting myself feel everything, I know that it's a lot. My family's broken apart because of my dad. Everything has changed completely, from the biggest to the smallest things, and adjusting to this new life has not been easy. It'll take a lot of time to get used to it, and I'm trying my best to move on and put this nightmare away. A few days ago, Dad showed up at our house, and he seemed very disoriented and disheveled. He requested that he needs to talk to us. Well, I was hesitant, but I let him in and called Mom. He revealed to us that his lover had left him after the divorce and everything that had happened, and it turned out that she was with him only because of his money. As soon as she learned that he had gotten a very small amount compared to Aunt Betty, she broke up with him on the spot. He said that he was going through a lot and that he was just wanting to apologize to us, and Mom straight up refused and said that she was not going to forgive him ever. Dad's reaction to Mom's refusal was strange. He started to act entitled, claiming that he had been punished enough and he had to go through a lot, and hearing this, I was about to give him a piece of my mind. However, Mom lashed out before I got the chance to, and she let all of her thoughts and just let them out and projected all the pain and frustration right onto him, which, in my opinion, he truly deserved.